Bar and Grill. And kicking things off, we'll go over to baseball.
Yeah, that's going on.
It is going on. And you know what? I wasn't a Tennessee, I didn't know much about Tennessee baseball before the season. And obviously, it's been an incredible year for this team. And it's been exciting. You know, Auburn was going to be a tough opponent, knowing that they're ranked and again a SEC rival. But we won the series 2-1, and it was after a massive first game, 17-4 win.
Ouch.
Very ouch. Then the second one we lost 6-8, but we rebounded and got a 5-3 win just last evening or Sunday actually against them. And yeah, great win for us. But you know, this baseball season moving along, how are you feeling? You know, Tucker, what do you think about this baseball team, and what have you seen from this group as we played Auburn? Obviously, we lost one, but are you concerned about that loss, or is it just, look, you're going to drop some every now and then? This is baseball.
You are absolutely going to drop some every now and again. I think this was Tennessee's toughest test in the SEC so far. Really, every game in the series was competitive, probably till about the seventh inning stretch, and then somebody pulled away. Auburn has proved that they're a very tough team. No one really saw them coming out and being good this season. They had a really rough season last year. I think finished maybe 12th last season. So they kind of came out of nowhere. They brought in this big-time transfer by the name of Sonny DiChiara, who, I mean, really is just like an Italian version of Big Papi living on the south side of Birmingham. Dude can smack a baseball. We all saw it in that Saturday game. I think the second that he touched that ball, everybody in the stadium knew that it was gone. So they've definitely got some good bats, some really good arms as well. You know, I don't know if it changes the result any, but that Friday game, they had to pull their pitcher in the second inning. So, you know, maybe he pitches a little bit longer. Maybe there's a little bit of a different result. You're not climbing into the bullpen as far as they did in that game. But, yeah, it was a very tough series for Tennessee. They got it done. And I think the big thing that we learned is that Ben Joyce can play multiple innings if needed, maybe not just one or two a game. But if you get in a tough situation, you can throw him for more than you expect.
And it's incredible, too, because that's someone who comes in and is throwing 105 miles an hour. You know, where else do you see that from someone coming in as a reliever? I mean, it's got to be terrifying for opposing bats, because you're thinking, okay, we're getting a fresh arm in here. It's going to be difficult for a little bit, but you never, ever expect someone to just come in throwing 105 miles per hour of heat. That's just, I couldn't imagine trying to adjust to that change in power.
And I can't even process how fast 105 miles an hour is, because obviously the closest we can get is like, and maybe you're going like 80 to get through traffic, but 105 miles an hour is, you probably couldn't hear my snap I just did, but it's fast.
You don't drive that fast through a school zone. I will say that. Yeah. But Devin, you've been following along with softball a lot, obviously, but I'm curious, what's your take on this baseball team as well? Did you expect a season like this? And if not, what are the most surprising aspects of this group?
Well, yeah. And also I'm just going to say, again, as well, that is a fantastic intro for this show tonight, showcasing all the cool stuff with the baseball team, the season showing that is fantastic. But yeah, I didn't expect the Tennessee Vols to be number one and to remain number one for many, many weeks. I mean, there's a lot of volatility in the baseball season, and we've seen number one teams like come and go, especially at the beginning of the season. But yeah, it's been really crazy to see how good Tennessee has been throughout this entire stretch, and I figured Auburn would be pretty tough because they
ever since I started paying attention to UT sports, how powerful the South and the SEC really is in baseball.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it being such an integral part of just this warm weather. I mean, I don't know, all the baseball movies I've seen, it's always been a hot summer day and they're out there throwing the ball around. It's just, again, it's like the Sandlot. You grow up, you watch it, and it's something that I can't imagine a summer day being without. And again, I was never good at baseball, never played it, but watching was like, wow, that sure is something that's just part of summer. But moving right along, Devin, you have covered a ton of softball this season. And before we turn it over to you on that front, I want to welcome Chris Clark to the show. He's down at Cool Beans. Chris, how are you doing? How is the vibe down at Cool Beans?
Hey guys, can you hear me?
All right, we cannot hear Chris, so we are just going to keep going with the show. But Chris is down at Cool Beans. If you're watching the stream, you can see him on the screen. He is waving for all of those not watching. But yes, Chris is down at Cool Beans, and we will try to get those audio issues fixed momentarily. But taking it back over to you, Devin, we mentioned it, softball. What has that been like for you this season? You've covered so many of the games, and recently, what have you seen from that team?
Well, recently, and first off, and I'm going to say, you can go down to Cool Beans right now. The Tennessee and Ole Miss are playing on SEC Network, so I'm sure one of the TVs will probably have it there, of course, along with the Stanley Cup playoff games that just started up. So yeah, Cool Beans, of course, is great, and I can't wait to hear Chris when he can get on. But yeah, the softball team has been fantastic. One word I would say about the softball team, because even though they're not in the elite tier like the baseball team is, they're definitely in the next tier down, very comfortably, I would say so. But one thing that's very true about this team is they never give up. They're extremely resilient, and I saw it many times throughout their incredible series against Texas A&M where they swept them. And I know that was a little bit ago, but I just wanted to bring it up again that there were times it seemed like they were going to lose for sure. I mean, down by a few runs. And of course, there's only 7 innings in softball. So down by a few runs heading into the 6th inning, and it's like, oh no, they're going to lose this. All of a sudden, the bats get hot. They start making plays. They never give up. And they walk off a couple of home runs. One of them was a walk-off grand slam victory from the catcher, Kelsey Leach.
Wow.
It was incredible to see. And the atmosphere was fantastic. And there's this great group of fans at the softball games that always dresses up in different outfits. I remember there was one time where they dressed up as Vikings, and I asked them, like, why? Why'd you do that? And they said, they're like, well, we just heard Karen Weekly, the head coach, is Norwegian, so we just felt like dressing up as Vikings this time. And I'm like, oh, okay. But they dress up as like tons of different things constantly, and they have a great time, and they really get the crowd fired up. So shout out to those fans. They are absolutely fantastic, and they make it a really great environment to go see games and make it tough on opposing teams. And in Tennessee's recent series with Ole Miss, on the road against Ole Miss, and road series in the SEC. SEC softball is almost like SEC baseball. It's a juggernaut, lots of juggernaut teams like LSU, Florida, Alabama, of course, Arkansas, and of course Tennessee. It can be thrown in there too. And Tennessee had to go on the road against Ole Miss. They lost the first game 5-4, but they rebounded strong yesterday with a 10-1 mercy rule victory. And it looks like Ashley Rogers, who started out the season as the ace, got injured. Looks like she might be coming back a little bit. She had a good game in the victory, and we'll just have to see what they do tonight. Tonight's the rubber match, so hopefully Tennessee wins the series on the road.
That's fantastic. And before I ask you, Tucker, what you think about that third game, the rubber match, we're going to try and see if Chris's audio, if we have him on here now. Chris, how are you doing? Can you hear us? More importantly, can we hear you?
Yeah, I mean, I can hear you guys. Can you hear me now?
All right. Unfortunately, we cannot hear Chris. We've heard that some of you may be able to hear him on the stream, but us in studio are not able to hear him, unfortunately. So we will get him on here some way, shape, or form as the show goes on. Again, apologies for those technical difficulties, but Tucker, turning it over to you. This rubber match coming up here, how important is it for the Lady Vol softball team to get this win? And if we get it, what does it mean for their season going forward?
So I really don't have a great assessment of this team from the games that I've covered. They really haven't been against great competition outside of that UNC Greensboro game. But I do know this. Devin is absolutely right when it comes to SEC softball being a juggernaut. You got teams like, Alabama, sometimes Florida, even Auburn that can get up in there, really, really be tough to play against. And, a big conference win, a conference series win is always a big win, no matter who it's against. So if you can go out there and get this win and then perform well in the SEC tournament, get a spot for a region, it could be a huge point in the season.
Yeah, absolutely. And it would be great to see us get that win. And as you said, really establish what this team is made of, as some of the opponents previously in the year haven't been great litmus tests. But continuing with this theme of UT sports, we had some recent VFLs that had a pretty nice past couple days with the NFL draft. And we had plentiful members make it to of Big Orange community make it to the draft this year. And absolutely have to shout out Alante Taylor, 2nd round pick. That was really surprising. I didn't know he would go that high, but 49th overall to the Saints. And then in the 3rd round, Velus Jones Jr., his incredible ascension up various draft boards is thanks due to large part to his incredible senior season, as well as his combine performance, putting up some incredible numbers on the 40-yard dash and some other metrics. He goes, again, 3rd round, 71st overall to the Bears, where he could be number 1. I mean, he could make it as a number 1 wide receiver there. Allen Robinson didn't fill his role well there this past season and is off to LA. So there's opportunity for him there. And then you had Matthew Butler going in the 5th round, 175th overall to the Raiders, where he will play defensive line for them and look to make a contribution right off the bat. And then Cade Mays, someone who, he came here and there was a lot of hype behind him. And, obviously coming from Georgia, there was a lot of excitement with him. But injuries derailed his season and also his Senior Bowl performance, and he missed out on a high draft pick, but he still got drafted, which is huge. Going to the Panthers, 199th overall, which is the same place Tom Brady went, over to the Panthers. And of course, there is former Volunteer Jarrett Guarantano signing a undrafted free agent contract with the Cardinals. Interesting opportunity for him there with the way Kyler Murray runs that offense. Guarantano, while not as mobile a QB, could fit in there with some interesting out-of-pocket throws. But yeah, it's exciting for the Tennessee Vols. And starting with you, Dylan, what did you think about all these Volunteers getting drafted? Does it show our football team is back to some level of, hey, we want these Tennessee guys on our pro rosters, or what do you think?
And we've obviously improved since my freshman year of Pruitt saying that we're not going to be very good. But the fact that we've improved that much and we're sending people to the NFL just shows eventually, I don't know how soon it'll be, we're going to be an even bigger force to reckon with. And then obviously going back to the Pruitt administration, you have JG going to Arizona, which I found very surprising because we've joked many times on the show that he wouldn't even qualify for the XFL. And so the fact that he's in the Cardinals organization, which they're decent, is very surprising to me.
Absolutely. And it's definitely been a very surprising and exciting time again for VFLs and those who were Volunteers for us. But we're now moving on to break. And on the other side, we will have Dylan and Devin talking some professional hockey. You're listening to 90.3 The Rock.
Volunteer Radio stays on air thanks to Cool Beans, the 21-up college sports bar next to campus on Lake Avenue, a block off the strip. Cool Beans has 25 rotating beer taps and bottles. HGTVs everywhere, along with darts, pool, and arcade games. Open every day at 11 a.m. to late night. Burgers, wings, and sandwiches, vol card accepted. Cool Beans hosts Rock Solid Sports every Monday night at 7. Trivia Tuesdays, Bingo Thursdays. More on Instagram at Knox Cool Beans or CoolBeansBar.com.
Support to keep WUTK on air comes from listeners and from the UT Athletic Department and the UT Lady Vols softball team, whose home season schedule at Sherry Parker Lee Stadium features games against SEC rivals Texas A&M, Auburn, and others. AllVols.com for Lady Vols softball tickets and more. UT students need a valid UT ID for admission to all home games. WTK's Rock Solid Sports provides UT softball coverage. Volunteer Radio wishes the 2022 Lady Vols softball team good luck as they compete to return to the College Softball World Series. Support for WUTK comes from Fieldhouse Social, the modern sports bar next to campus at University Commons. Fieldhouse Social serves American craft fare such as burgers, wings, and more with high tops around the bar, a separate dining area, and a center lounge with leather chairs and couches in front of their 23-foot LED TV wall for Tennessee and pro sports. Fieldhouse Social is an outdoor patio with trivia twice a week and sponsors Wednesday's Rock Solid Sports. FieldhouseSocial.com.
The Rock thanks Central Flats and Taps for sponsoring our Bonnaroo or Bust 2022 contest, and they will be hosting the reverse drawing to see who the grand prize winner is tomorrow, Tuesday, May 3rd. Registration for our 90 finalists runs from 5:30 to 6:30 p.m., and the reverse drawing begins immediately after. The public is invited to be there for the party as well, as it is Pint Night benefiting WUTK's 40 for 40 fundraiser. More info on the Bonnaroo or Bust reverse drawing and party May 3rd at Central Flats and Taps is at WUTKRadio.com.
I'm WUTK alum John Wilkerson from the Vol Network and Sports Talk on the Sports Animal, and you're tuned to Volunteer Radio, 90.3 The Rock, UT's College of Rock, the original home for the Sports Update. Go Vols!
Volunteer Radio remains on the air thanks to listener donations and support from the UT Athletic Department. After making it to Omaha last season, the 2022 baseball ball season begins in February and runs into May, featuring games with SEC rivals South Carolina, Alabama, Georgia, and more at Lindsey Nelson Stadium. Season group and individual game ticket info is at allvols.com. Students need to show their valid UT ID at the gate for entrance. Tune into Rock Solid Sports for UT baseball coverage, and The Rock wishes Coach Vitello and the Baseballs good luck on the diamond this season.
The Rock thanks the Hill Bar and Grill for their support. The Hill on Forest Avenue is open 7 days a week at 11 a.m. until late night for dining indoors or on the expanded patio. The Hill has a variety of appetizers and a full menu of wings, burgers, tacos, and more. The Hill is our Thursday Munchie Madness sponsor and home of Friday's Rock Solid Sports. On Instagram at The Hill Knox. Menu at thehillknox.com.
90.3 The Rock proudly brings Knoxville the best in new and classic independent and underground music on the Indie Hour, Monday nights from 8 to 10. Sponsored by Magnolia Records, 1515 North Central Avenue in Knoxville, and the Tomato Head Restaurant on Market Square and in the Gallery Shopping Center. It's the Indie Hour, Monday nights at 8 on Knoxville's original independent radio, 90.3 The Rock.
Volunteer Radio remains on the air thanks to support from Tennessee Smokies Baseball, the AA Southern League affiliate of the Chicago Cubs, whose 2022 regular season schedule features 6-game homestands Tuesdays through Sundays at nearby Smokies Stadium in Kodak against the Chattanooga Lookouts, Mississippi Braves, Birmingham Barons, and more. WUTK's Rock Solid Sports will cover Smokies Baseball all season long. SmokiesBaseball.com, and a link is at WUTKRadio.com.
Hey, Knoxville. This is WUTK alum and voice of the Tennessee Titans, Mike Keith. Now back to more of my favorite sports show, Rock Solid Sports, on 90.3 The Rock.
Volunteer Radio stays on air thanks to Cool Beans, the 21-up college sports bar next to campus on Lake Avenue, a block off the strip. Cool Beans has 25 rotating beer taps and bottles. HGTVs everywhere, along with darts, pool, and arcade games. Open every day at 11 a.m. to late night. Burgers, wings, and sandwiches, vol card accepted. Cool Beans hosts Rock Solid Sports every Monday night at 7. Trivia Tuesdays, Bingo Thursdays. More on Instagram at Knox Cool Beans or CoolBeansBar.com.
Support to keep WUTK on air comes from listeners and from the UT Athletic Department and the UT Lady Vols softball team, whose home season schedule at Sherry Parker Lee Stadium features games against SEC rivals Texas A&M, Auburn, and others. allvols.com for Lady Vols softball tickets and more. UT students need a valid UT ID for admission to all home games. WTK's Rock Solid Sports provides UT softball coverage. Volunteer Radio wishes the 2022 Lady Vols softball team good luck as they compete to return to the College Softball World Series.
All right. Hello and welcome back to this edition of Rock Solid Sports. I am Grant Mitchell, your host, and we've got Dylan right next to me. We've got Tucker and Devin on the other side of the glass. And now we're getting over into Dylan and Devin's segment here with hockey.
All right, before we go into what's going on, I just want to see who's playing right now. As of right now, 11:05 in the first period, we have Boston and Carolina tied 0-0. In a few minutes, Tampa and Toronto starting. At 9:30 is St. Louis and Minnesota, and at 10 is LA and Edmonton. So, Devin, it's playoff times, and
oh yeah,
how are you feeling about everything?
Well, it's one of my favorite times of the year. Normally, I'm slightly bugged because normally, it always seems to be in a normal year that I'm done with school by this time, like it's summertime and I'm on break and I can just relax and watch all these games. Unfortunately, not the case. I've still got some school to do, so might not, and I won't really have full time to relax and watch these games until the second round, but it's very exciting. Dylan, and I know we're going to be a little biased, and I know the NFL playoffs were incredible this year. Some of the best NFL playoffs ever.
Oh, yeah.
But in general, I think the Stanley Cup playoffs is the greatest postseason tournament in all of professional sports.
Well, statistically, I think it's the hardest trophy to win because you have to go through so much. Because with every other sport, with the exception of baseball, you have to win just one game. Whereas hockey, when you combine the physical play of it, and you've seen sports, a bunch of grown men wearing riot gear, basically just smashing into each other. And you have to do that for 4 to 7 games, and it really takes it out on you. So it's very exciting.
Yeah, and I know NBA fans are going to say, "Wait, hold on a second," but our sport, also, I mean, it's the same amount. I'm like, yeah, but I swear in the NHL, and I know this season for the NBA is actually the playoffs have been great, and there's lots of teams that could win it, but typically that's not always the case. Typically, it seems like there's only a few teams that, can really win it. In the NHL, though, there's always tons of I mean, Montreal going to the Stanley Cup to play the Lightning was
last year
was ridiculous. Yeah,
and
there's
now they're not even qualified. They're the worst team in the league.
That would be the equivalent of either, your team, Washington, or Dallas or Nashville making a run all the way to the Stanley Cup final this season. Like, it just doesn't seem, it's like, it doesn't seem possible, but you never know. It could happen. And so I wanted to say, obviously we know the Bruins and Hurricanes series just started. Interesting thing I saw about it, Dylan, was, and I picked the Bruins to win this series in 6.
I'm with that too.
But here's what's interesting, though, and I only picked that because historically the Bruins have been good against the Hurricanes in the playoffs. But this season, I saw that the Hurricanes beat the Bruins all 3 times they played each other and outscored them by a total of 16-1 in the regular season. They won the first game 3-0, then a 7-1 victory, then a 6-0 victory.
And Carolina's just another example of an odd market that works out. I was it 2005 they won a cup?
Yeah.
So you wouldn't expect a team, I guess, I mean this with as little offense as possible if anyone's a fan of hockey in the South, but I wouldn't expect a team further south than DC to work out. I'm surprised even hockey in DC works.
Hey, Nashville is a great
they've been great. We talked about the Stadium Series a few weeks ago, and it is the second most excited fan base of hockey I've ever seen. And that's just barely second place because I was at the Caps parade, and don't get me wrong, we care, but Nashville just came out of nowhere being good, in my opinion. But we also have Tampa Bay and Toronto in the East, Tampa going for their three-peat, and Toronto, you have Austin Matthews, which I don't think you and I have talked about this. I've mentioned before. Obviously, Alex Ovechkin is kind of on the twilight years of his career. Would you say that Austin Matthews could be the next Ovechkin?
I mean, I could totally see with his crazy goal scoring pace is just ridiculous. And the fact that he doesn't always have to score goals by pulling off like ridiculous moves like guys like McKinnon, McDavid, and Draisaitl can do. I mean, he can, but he can also score plenty of goals just picking his spots and like knowing exactly where to set up. So that's kind of almost Ovechkin-like, where Ovechkin has his certain areas. I mean, Ovechkin, especially towards the end of his career in the last several years, he hasn't been like always going in and crashing in like he used to.
He's not as fancy as he used to be, but he's always sitting there on the power play in that left dot. It's one of the scariest things ever. I don't want to be on the business end of a slap shot from him.
No, and I wanted to ask you real quick, Dylan. So as we look at these playoff series, in the first round, which series do you think is going to be the best one, the most exciting one? And I'll let you know what I think, which one I think is going to be the best.
Do you want East or West? Because we'll get to the West in a little bit.
You know, I mean, I was going for general, but yeah, we can say have one for the East, one for the West.
All right, so for the East, Tampa Bay and Toronto looks very exciting. I know the Caps playing the Panthers in the East, but I will be honest, that's something that I've been dreading all year, especially over the past few weeks as the playoff picture has been put together. But like I said, you got Tampa going for the three-peat, and you have Austin Matthews establishing himself as the next generation face of goal scoring, because the 80s had Gretzky, Lemieux was around the 80s, but the 90s had Lemieux. The early 2000s up until now has had Ovechkin, and now you have Austin Matthews. What about you for the East?
Yeah, I mean, I was gonna say that one, and what's interesting is also Toronto. They're getting on, and I'll say, but another great one I think will be Pittsburgh and New York.
Oh,
I think
definitely a fun
that's
one.
Certainly, because those two teams. Okay, if either one of those two teams' starting goaltenders gets injured, it's over for that team because their backups are rough.
To be fair, the last time Pittsburgh put their backup in over their starter during the playoffs, they won a cup twice.
Yeah, well, that is true. Yeah, but in this case, though, but I'm telling you, if you look at who the backups are for Jari and Shesterkin, I mean, they've really done. Like they've had like almost nothing.
They're no Marc-Andre Fleury and Matt Murray combo, and they're no Heinrich Lundqvist and whoever was starting for him backing up him when the Rangers made their semifinals run against LA.
Yeah, but I think that could be such an interesting series because the Rangers, in my opinion, are way better than the Penguins on paper, but you cannot count out the Penguins' previous championship winning experience that the Rangers, outside of Barclay Goodrow, who of course was a very good role player for the Lightning these last couple of times, but outside of Barclay Goodrow, the Rangers' star players, I mean Panarin, Chris Kreider, who's come out of nowhere, and had a 50-goal season. Adam Fox, of course, is fantastic, and Shesterkin. I mean, they have not had good deep playoff experience at all. Period. And when you compare that to Crosby and Malkin and Rust and
Letang,
and Gensel, and it's like, okay, well, they've still got. And the other thing for the Penguins is they're like, okay, this is one of our last chances. This might be the last chance with this exact core. Just looking at Letang's longevity, it's like, okay, this is probably the last time with this core that they'll be in the playoffs.
And then I'm pretty sure Malkin's a free agent at the end of the season too.
Yeah, but he said he'd be willing to take a pay cut to make it work because he wants to retire there.
Yeah, he's been, besides Crosby, the face of that franchise ever since Lemieux left.
Yeah, but Letang, they'll probably end up losing because he's getting worse, and and they're just probably not going to be able to make it work. But this is the last time with this core that they'll be able to go on a run. But the Rangers, I mean, their team is really physical and skillful, and has an incredible one of the best goalies in the league. And I really like that kind of combination. But yeah, Tampa and Toronto. And the funny thing about Tampa and Toronto is Toronto has lost in the first round of the playoffs the last 5 years in a row. And now they have to get over the hump by facing off against the two-time defending champ. And I don't see it. I see the Lightning winning in 7. I don't see the Leafs getting past the first round again.
7 games for that series seems reasonable, but I'm going to go with Toronto on that one. And then, obviously, to wrap up the East, we have Washington and Florida. Again, I'm really not looking forward to that. Florida, for some reason, has decided to become really good over the past year. They got the President's Trophy. For those who don't know, that means you had the best record in the entire season. So, really concerned about that. I know Washington's a powerhouse on the power play with Ovechkin in his office, like we said, and then you got Backstrom constantly passing him. But our biggest problem is our goaltending.
Oh, yeah.
Samsonov and Vanacek are good, but they're not as great as Braden Holtby or Olaf Kolzig back in the day. And the issue with that is we signed Lundqvist a few years ago to kind of teach them how to be a good goalie and step in just in case. But with him gone, it kind of screwed us. So I'm going to say Florida in 5 for that one. But moving on to the West, obviously, local team, even though they're 2 hours, 45 minutes away. Nashville against Colorado. How you feeling about that one, Devin?
Well, before I fully knew the extent of UC Saros' injury, I was thinking the Predators really had a chance.
How bad is it, by the way?
Well, the reports are that it's a high ankle sprain and he's going to miss the entire playoffs.
Yeah,
so
that's
even
not
if they,
good.
so even if they somehow, but Nashville matches up really well against Colorado. They won the season series against Colorado 3-1. The problem for Colorado is Nashville is just way more physical than Colorado. Nashville's got a lot more fighters like Borowiecki and Tanner Jeannot, aka the Oxbow Ox, and they just have just way more physicality. Colorado's got way more skill, has way more firepower, but sometimes they get frustrated by Nashville because Nashville just wears them down and fights them and grinds on them. But that was also because they had such a great goalie backing them up. And Riddick is solid, but Saros was really incredible this season. And so now he's down. And before that, I was saying Nashville could push this to a 6 or 7 game series, but I still had them losing. Now I think it's probably going to be a 5-game series with Nashville losing. I think they still get at least 1 game over Colorado, one of their home games, either game 3 or game 4, because, Bridgestone Arena, one of the toughest places to play. So that environment will be absolutely crazy. I don't see them losing both of those games.
Right.
They'll win at least one of those 2, but that's it. Because for Colorado, their team is a literal super team. Let's just be their team is ridiculous.
They have the second best power play in the league behind Washington, in my opinion, because if you've watched footage, the puck is constantly moving. Like for those of you that are watching on video, it looks exactly like this with all the passing, and then they shoot, give it to McKinnon, score.
Yeah, and unfortunately for Colorado, Landeskog is not going to be available, but they have so many other players that have, like, they had Kadri break out this season, and he's always been good, but he's really been a great goal scorer there. And then Makar, of course. And although I think Yossi should win the Norris over Makar, just my opinion. Their amount of points Yossi has scored as a defenseman this season is ridiculous.
It's great.
And yeah, ridiculously good. And but Yossi versus Makar is a great matchup. But they have Makar, obviously McKinnon. They have Rantanen. They have Kadri. They just have a lot of depth scoring as well. Colorado is a serious team, and it's either for them. It's either they have to not only get past the first round, or they have to get all the way at least to the Western Conference Final or bust. In fact, some would argue they probably have to get to the Stanley Cup Final at least or bust. Like, that's how good this team is.
Kind of leading into my final question for hockey, we'll call it. What are your predictions for the end? And obviously it goes until at the latest June 30th. But who do you got coming out on top?
And I know this is going to be a little boring and I know I usually like to make more hot takes on this kind of stuff just because that's more fun. But I'm going to go with Colorado versus Florida, and I'm going to say Florida wins the Stanley Cup.
The two matchups in particular, we talked about this at lunch earlier today. From the West, it's either going to be Colorado or Calgary because Calgary's been hot, no pun intended.
Yeah, Gaudreau is insane.
Oh, yeah. And then from the East, I got either Toronto or Florida because all of these teams have, with the exception of Colorado, have basically come out of nowhere and have been one of the more dominant teams this entire year. And you have all these other teams like Boston, Tampa, Pittsburgh, New York, Washington, and then St. Louis, LA, Dallas. They all have playoff experience, but these other teams don't have as much deep playoff experience over the past few years, and they're going to upset everyone else.
Oh, yeah, I think so. And I can't wait to see. Oh, also, but I will say, if the Kings upset the Oilers, that would be the funniest thing ever. I'm sorry. I would just think that'd be so hilarious.
Well, that's kind of the issue with Connor McDavid. Even though he's good, the Oilers kind of suck.
Yeah, the team, and I've made fun of them getting Evander Kane because, but he's actually fit in really well with the team. Like he's actually a perfect fit for what they've got. He's actually had a really good season with them, as funny as that is. So I make fun of it, but it's like, but it actually is working. He's actually become a serious threat. One last thing I want to say, because we talk about favorite series from the East, I think St. Louis versus Minnesota is going to be a 7-game series too. I can't wait to see that.
And I called that one as soon as they announced it. That's going to be a set matchup. To wrap things up, who do you have for that series since it's going to be very close?
Oh, yeah. It's so back. I've been so back and forth on this. I'm going to go with Minnesota.
Yeah, I want to see another Marc-Andre Fleury Cup run to show how Vegas did him dirty, Pittsburgh did him dirty.
I want to see Fiala do well because I don't think they're going to be able to keep him shortly after, because he'll become expensive and they probably won't be. So I want to see him do well while he's still on a really good team. And I like a lot of Minnesota's players, Joel Eriksson Ek, Kaprizov, of course. They just have a good mix of young guys and veterans. But, of course, St. Louis also has that, and they've got experience. I think they're so evenly matched. I know St. Louis has had Minnesota's number, though, recently, but I'm really hoping a great 7-game series, and I'm predicting Minnesota to come out on top.
Definitely.
Absolutely. And that has been a great update of hockey. I am always far too behind on what's going on, especially when it's playoff season right now.
Well, what's the one thing I told you that's the minimum you need to know?
Ovechkin's the GOAT.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. But anyways, Tucker, I saw you when I came in, I saw the Titans shirt, and I thought, I got to ask this man, Malik Willis, how do you feel?
So this is a very interesting pick that the Titans made, and there's been a push for, the Titans to get a new quarterback from Titans fans, since there's been some disappointment with Ryan Tannehill recently. The way I look at that situation with Ryan Tannehill is he's kind of like what Jared Goff was for LA. You appreciate what the guy did, but at some point you've got to move on. So based on the pick, I think Malik Willis is the future that they're going for. Hopefully that's the case, and he doesn't bust.
Well, he also seems to be a quarterback that can fit into that system a lot better as well, because right now they're primarily run heavy, and I feel like in a run heavy team, you need to have someone who's got a massive arm, and Malik Willis has got a cannon, and you put him under center, do a play action pass, and you just roll out of pocket and throw it downfield. I think it's going to be pretty exciting to see him in the pocket. Obviously, this season, give Tannehill the opportunity, obviously, to lead the team throughout the regular season. He's making $38 million. He should be able to do that under that kind of contract. And with a healthy Derrick Henry coming back at the start of the year, that'll definitely help as well. But no A.J. Brown will be an interesting situation for them. Of course, they did take a wide receiver in the first round to be his replacement and heir apparent to his role. But again, it's going to be a hard situation, I think, for them in the passing game because that was such a deficiency for them. Their pass plays, I don't want to criticize their offense too much, but their pass plays a lot of times look pretty rudimentary. And much better than what I could draw up on Madden, but it didn't properly utilize the receivers they had. And Julio Jones, obviously he was banged up, but you've got A.J. Brown there who, when he came back and was healthy, you got to get the ball out to him a little bit more and make the offense a little bit more two-dimensional. And with Tannehill, that was one of the things early on with the Titans that was exciting because he could scramble. He had that big knee injury when he was with the Dolphins. but he was still a mobile player because the man was a wide receiver in college. He doesn't just lose all that agility and athleticism, but he definitely looked a lot older, a little bit more haggard in the pocket this past season, especially that Steelers game where he had an abysmal 100 and some odd yards passing, a fumble, I think 1 or 2 interceptions. I mean, it was hard to watch. But Malik Willis, he, like you said, hopefully he's not a bust. But with quarterbacks and any draft pick, you're taking a gamble, and you never really know what you're going to get. I hope the Titans drafted well with Malik Willis, and I think he could really blossom into a very, very good quarterback for them, but it remains to be seen. But outside of the Titans, we had some other interesting draft developments. We touched on this before on the Friday show, but Dylan, you being a fellow Baltimore born and you were raised there, I was not, but I mean, Hollywood Brown, what do you think of that trade? Does it make sense to you? Where are you at with us having one less receiver?
It's obviously, actually, no, I'm kind of okay with it because as we know, Lamar's running game is pretty solid. So sure, if running doesn't work out, he has one less person to throw it to. But when Lamar starts running that ball, I feel more comfortable with the fact that he's going to get it to where it needs to go.
Yeah.
Other than him throwing, because obviously we remember the days of Joe Flacco. He was our good throwing quarterback, but those days are over. We have a solid running quarterback. And what's the joke that Jason makes all the time? We have a running back that plays quarterback.
Yeah, and you know what? I still think that it's his throwing ability for Lamar. I think Lamar Jackson has a great arm, and I think he's very, very, very accurate. Because look at that game against the Indianapolis Colts, that comeback. I turned that game off before the whole turn happened, and the Ravens came all the way back and won it in an amazing fashion. But Lamar threw for over 400 yards. He had multiple touchdown passes, and he was just throwing dimes. He's not just a quarterback that's, his running ability obviously changes the makeup of the defense and how they're going to prepare for him. But just his level and ability to throw the ball is something that has been just really underrated. And I think one reason that people can really kind of negate his ability to throw the ball is because he has had lacking receiving cores in his time as a Baltimore Raven, as has been the case for a lot of Raven quarterbacks, with exception to Flacco when he had Derek Mason and I think Anquan Bolden. Bolden for a year. I think those two were together for a year, and then Mason retired, and they got Torrey Smith, and Smith was really good for them for a few seasons. But outside of those players, there's been a lack of consistent hands with the integration of Andrews at tight end and us having a great player of Mark Andrews' caliber, an all-pro just dominating out there. That opens things up, and with Lamar, we've really seen him blossom when he's able to make those passes to those guys. But now he's basically just got Mark Andrews, Rashad Bateman, who showed some flashes his rookie year, but for the most part, still looked pretty young on the field. So they're counting on a massive season from him. And they lost Sammy Watkins in free agency. I mean, no one's really crying over that because Watkins was just fast. He didn't really have anything else that he brought to the table. But I don't know. I always trust the Ravens draft picks because they seem to always get the best player on the board. And they filled out their defense really well. And they got a interesting tackle, 6'8", 340 some pounds. I mean, he's going to be scary out of Minnesota. I don't remember his name, but
is he Ray Lewis scary though?
He's Jonathan Ogden scary. Or I wouldn't go that far actually. Ogden's a Hall of Famer, as is Lewis. But yeah, that is your Ravens update. I know there aren't a lot of people that love the Ravens, especially in Titans country here. But
we have a microphone, and you will listen to everything we have to say.
Yeah, but moving right along with that NFL news and sticking on the sort of Hollywood Brown trajectory, he got shipped off for a first rounder to the Cardinals, and Arizona, coincidentally, has recently seen some trouble with their number one wide receiver, DeAndre Hopkins. Hopkins last year only played in 10 games, dealt with a hammy injury and a few other things. And now he's been popped for PED violation, performance-enhancing drugs, and he's going to miss 6 games next season. And the Cardinals also lost Christian Kirk in free agency to a way overpaid contract to the Jaguars. That's neither here nor there. But yeah, I mean, getting Hollywood Brown, that's going to be pretty interesting to see. Kyler Murray winding up and throwing to him. But for DeAndre Hopkins, I wonder what this will look like for the rest of his career, if he bounces back or not. And Tucker, being a interdivisional rival for a while now, and then him moving over from Houston to the Cardinals in one of the worst trades ever. What do you think about his ability to come back from the hamstring injury that hindered his season last year, and then 2, this PED suspension. What do you think of DeAndre Hopkins' prospects moving forward?
Yeah, well, of course, when the whole thing happened with Bill O'Brien and DeAndre Hopkins, I was with my friends, I think, and we were just laughing uncontrollably because he called him Aaron Hernandez and basically shoved him out the door for David Johnson, which was just terrible. Yeah. It's an awful comparison, really. But this DeAndre Hopkins, I feel like has not been the same guy since he's been an Arizona Cardinal, really. I think he's, he had that one great catch, the Hail Murray, as they call it. But last year definitely was not as productive. And, the suspension is going to be very interesting to watch. Mm-hmm. I'll be excited to see what Kyler does with Hollywood, though, because those 2 were college teammates at Oklahoma.
Yeah, and they did some really great things at Oklahoma. And right before we go to break, just have to make one point. I completely agree with you that last season DeAndre was not the same player, but in his first year in Arizona for the 2020 season, in the 16 games he played, when it was still a 16-game season, he had 115 catches, 1,407 yards, and 6 receiving touchdowns. So hopefully he can return to that form, but if not, it'll be interesting to see what the Cardinals do with that salary. And on the other side, we'll talk a little NBA playoffs before riding off into the sunset. You're listening to 90.3 The Rock.
Support for WUTK comes from Fieldhouse Social, the modern sports bar next to campus at University Commons. Fieldhouse Social serves American craft fare such as burgers, wings, and more with high tops around the bar, a separate dining area, and a center lounge with leather chairs and couches in front of their 23-foot LED TV wall for Tennessee and pro sports. Fieldhouse Social is an outdoor patio with trivia twice a week and sponsors Wednesday's Rock Solid Sports. FieldhouseSocial.com.
Hey, everybody, this is ESPN and SEC Network's Ryan McGee. When I'm on Rocky Top, I'm listening to Rock Solid Sports on 90.3 The Rock, the only show with the home field advantage for Tennessee sports.
Volunteer Radio remains on the air thanks to listener donations and support from the UT Athletic Department. After making it to Omaha last season, the 2022 baseball ball season begins in February and runs into May, featuring games with SEC rivals South Carolina, Alabama, Georgia, and more at Lindsey Nelson Stadium. Season, group, and individual game ticket info is at allvols.com. Students need to show their valid UT ID at the gate for entrance. Tune into Rock Solid Sports for UT baseball coverage, and The Rock wishes Coach Vitello and the Baseballs good luck on the diamond this season.
Volunteer Radio thanks Wavely for their support. Wavely is the new job searching app that uses AI to match talent to the jobs they actually want. Instantly chat with employers instead of applying. Resumes can be shared at the click of a button. Employers can post available jobs quickly and get real-time reaction. The Wavely app is available in all the app stores. WUTK and Wavely representatives will have information at campus remotes along the PED walkway or inside the student union this spring. Stay tuned. More at Wavely.com.
Crank it up to 11 every Monday night with The Funeral Directory. It's heavy metal on WUTK's longest-running specialty show. Sponsored by The Concourse, live music venue, 4328 North Broadway, concourseknox.com. The Funeral Directory, every Monday night from 10 p.m. to 1 a.m. on 90.3 The Rock.
The Rock thanks the Hill Bar and Grill for their support. The Hill on Forest Avenue is open 7 days a week at 11 a.m. until late night for dining indoors or on the expanded patio. The Hill has a variety of appetizers and a full menu of wings, burgers, tacos, and more. The Hill is our Thursday Munchie Madness sponsor and home of Friday's Rock Solid Sports. On Instagram at The Hill Knox, venue at thehillknox.com.
Volunteer Radio remains on the air thanks to support from Tennessee Smokies Baseball, the AA Southern League affiliate of the Chicago Cubs, whose 2022 regular season schedule features 6-game homestands Tuesdays through Sundays at nearby Smoky Stadium in Kodak against the Chattanooga Lookouts, Mississippi Braves, Birmingham Barons, and more. WUTK's Rock Solid Sports will cover Smokies baseball all season long. SmokiesBaseball.com, and a link is at WUTKRadio.com.
This is Mike Keith. Hope you're enjoying tonight's edition of Rock Solid Sports. Now let's turn it back over to the crew as you listen to 90.3 The Rock, rockin' ears for 40 years.
Hello and welcome back to this edition of Rock Solid Sports. I am your host and producer for tonight, Grant Mitchell, and we've got a great crew with you. I got Dylan, right here to my left, I've got Tucker and Devin across the glass there. We just talked a little bit of NFL after some NHL hockey, and now we're here to talk a little bit of NBA before we wrap the show. And, I would be remiss if I did not start with, again, another Tennessee team here, but the Memphis Grizzlies. The Grizzlies won a tightly contested series against the Minnesota Timberwolves 4-2. Didn't think it was going to be that hard of a series, but Timberwolves got a good roster, talented group. But now Golden State, the team that I absolutely loathe, beat the Memphis Grizzlies by one single point. Not two, not three, not four, one.
Pain.
117-116. Absolutely just frustrating, but I think the Grizzlies have got a lot better depth at their bigs, and also just John Morant is doing some crazy things. So I'm curious what you all think. Devin, I'll start off with you. How do you feel about the Grizzlies' chances against the Golden State Warriors?
I think, it's always pretty tough to lose one of your home games because it's not going to be easy to beat the Warriors when they're at home because they have a really tough home environment. I did want to say real quick, and I know nobody's going to believe me on this because I wish I had recorded it. I wish I had said it sooner. But when I was because when Morant was drafted, like a few years ago, right? So when I was in high school, I was telling my friends, I'm like, and we all, of course, watch college basketball, and we were fans of Belmont, too, which, of course, was rivals with Murray State. So we saw a lot of Morant, too. And I'm like, I really think John Morant is the best. I think he's better than Zion Williamson. And they're all like, no, Devin, that's completely ridiculous. That is totally stupid.
Yeah.
Zion is Zion literally the next LeBron James. He is a generational talent.
Yeah.
Ja is great, but but Zion is by far like the best prospect. Well, look at it now. That's all I got to say about that.
What's Zion even doing now?
Exactly. It's like, what does he even do? Supposedly, I heard the rumors he's going back to the New Orleans. He's going to actually play for the Pelicans next season. Who knows, though? But in any case, even if he does, whatever. I think John Morant has established himself as a really, truly incredible player. And Morant, I don't see why Morant is not considered the generational prospect from that class because he really plays like it. And, and he's still got a lot of growing pains to do. He still feels like especially at the end there, where he felt like he had to be the one to take it and score and tried to put up a tough shot and missed it. And you could tell he blames himself for that at the end. It's like, well, but you're the go-to guy, and maybe there could have been opportunities to pass it because everybody on the Warriors and everybody in the whole stadium was thinking the same thing. Oh, Morant's going to get the ball to drive into the lane. And unfortunately, that was just too obvious. So hopefully the Grizzlies come up with some more because I expect this to continue to stay tightly contested. And I know you guys also probably want to talk about the Draymond Green ejection, which to me, it was ridiculous that he got ejected, but he does have a history. So that's just what happens to you when you have a history. If Zaza Pachulia was to do the same thing, he would have gotten ejected, years ago when he was on the Warriors. But like if another player did that same thing, he wouldn't. It's like, but that's because they don't have a history.
Yeah, absolutely. And plus, I still can't get on board with Draymond Green just because of Steven Adams. But that whole situation there. But yeah. Other than that, I've got to say it's been a great show tonight. And once again, I've got to shout out our amazing Monday sponsor, Cool Beans, located at 1817 Lake Avenue here in Knoxville. They're open from 11 a.m. to 3 a.m. Check out Cool Beans Bar and Grill. Thank you so much. And thank you for listening to tonight's edition of Rock Solid Sports. I'm Grant. Next to me is Dylan. Across the glass again, Devin and Tucker. Have a good night.